When it comes to rebuilding yourself, the very first thing you have to understand is this: you can't change what you don't acknowledge. Too many people jump straight into trying to fix themselves without stopping to actually see themselves. And I'm not talking about a quick glance in the mirror. I mean the deep, honest kind of seeing, the kind where you strip away the excuses, the stories you've been telling yourself, and the distractions that keep you from facing the truth. Self-awareness is not about criticizing yourself, it's about observing without judgment. Imagine you're a scientist studying your own life. You're not here to shame yourself for past mistakes, you're here to gather data. What time do you usually start your day? How do you react when you're stressed? Who drains your energy? What thoughts dominate your mornings? The more you pay attention to these patterns, the more control you gain over them. Think about it like renovating a house. If you were going to rebuild a home, you wouldn't just start slapping on new paint without checking the foundation first. You'd inspect what's cracked, what's strong, and what's missing. Your life works the same way. The foundation of your growth is self-awareness. Without it, you're just redecorating the surface while the deeper structure stays the same. That's why so many people feel like they're working on themselves, but not actually changing. They're avoiding the uncomfortable process of truly understanding themselves. Self-awareness also means paying attention to the stories you've been carrying. Maybe you've been telling yourself you're just not confident, or that nothing ever works out for you. These stories might feel like the truth, but they're just mental habits, thought loops you've practiced for so long that they've started to feel permanent. Here's the thing: the brain loves patterns, and it will keep replaying the same ones until you disrupt them. The moment you start to notice them, you've already taken the first step to breaking them. A big mistake people make is thinking self-awareness will make them feel worse because they assume they'll just end up focusing on their flaws, but that's not the point. This isn't about obsessing over what's wrong. It's about becoming conscious of both your strengths and your weak spots. It's about seeing where you already shine and where you need to grow. The more honest you are with yourself, the more equipped you are to make changes that actually last. And here's something important. Self-awareness isn't built in a single aha moment. It's developed through consistent reflection. Every day, take a few minutes to ask yourself questions. What went well today? What drained me? What energized me? Did I act in a way that aligns with the person I want to be? When you build this into your daily routine, you'll start to notice patterns faster, and you'll start making better choices almost automatically. But you have to approach this with curiosity, not self-criticism. If you catch yourself thinking, "I'm so lazy," stop. Replace it with, "That's interesting. I noticed I avoided that task today. Why might that be?" This shift in language matters. It keeps you in a problem-solving mindset instead of a self-attacking one. When you're curious, you're open to solutions. When you're critical, you shut yourself down. The truth is, most people don't take the time to really understand themselves because it feels like a slow, invisible process. There's no instant gratification in sitting quietly and noticing your thoughts. But this step is non-negotiable if you want to rebuild yourself. Without it, you'll keep building on shaky ground, chasing quick fixes that never stick. With it, you'll have a blueprint for real change. So start today. Grab a notebook or use your phone and just start tracking your habits, your triggers, your wins, your setbacks. Become a detective in your own life. Because once you see the truth about where you are, you can chart a real path to where you want to be. And that's how you stop drifting and start rebuilding with intention. One honest observation at a time. When people talk about rebuilding their life, they often imagine some massive overnight transformation. Like waking up one morning with a brand new mindset, perfect habits, and unshakable confidence. That's a fantasy. Real change doesn't come from one giant leap. It comes from small, consistent steps repeated every single day. And this is where most people get it wrong. They set huge, overwhelming goals, and when they can't meet them instantly, they quit. But if you understand how change actually works, you'll stop looking for a magic moment and start building a daily system. Think of it like compound interest. If you put a little bit of money into a savings account every day, it doesn't look like much at first. But over time, the growth becomes exponential. Your habits work exactly the same way. One workout won't change your body. One day of reading won't make you wise. But if you keep stacking those small actions, you'll reach a point where the results are undeniable. That's the real secret. Big change hides inside small, boring daily actions. The reason small actions are so powerful is because they're sustainable. Anyone can push themselves for a week, but rebuilding yourself is a long game. When you choose something so small, it's almost laughable, like doing 5 push-ups a day or reading 2 pages of a book. It's easy to stay consistent. And once you're consistent, you can always increase the intensity later. But if you start by demanding too much from yourself, you'll burn out before you see progress. Another important thing to understand is that action creates momentum, not motivation. Too many people sit around waiting to feel ready before they start. That's not how it works. Motivation is a byproduct of action, not the other way around. The moment you start doing, even in the smallest way, you feel a little more in control, and that feeling pushes you to keep going. That's why I always say, don't focus on doing everything, just focus on doing something today. One of the most effective strategies you can use is something I call the non-negotiable list. These are the small daily actions that you commit to no matter what. It might be drinking 2 liters of water, walking for 10 minutes, writing in a journal, or meditating for 5 minutes. It's not about how big these actions are. It's about the fact that you do them every single day, even when you don't feel like it. This builds discipline, and discipline is the backbone of self-rebuilding. There's also a psychological benefit to starting small. Every time you complete one of these actions, you prove to yourself that you can follow through. And every time you prove that, you're strengthening your self-trust. Self-trust is one of the most valuable things you can develop because it changes the way you see yourself. You stop identifying as the person who never finishes anything and start seeing yourself as the kind of person who shows up no matter what. That identity shift is powerful. It influences every decision you make moving forward. And here's the truth you need to hear. Some days, you won't want to do it. You'll be tired, busy, distracted, or discouraged, but those are the most important days to keep your commitment. Because that's when you teach yourself that you're not controlled by your moods or your circumstances. You're in control. You're rebuilding yourself brick by brick, day by day. You don't rebuild a house in one afternoon. You lay one brick, then another, then another. Some days you'll feel like the progress is invisible, but over weeks and months, the structure starts to take shape. And one day you'll look back and realize how far you've come. That's the reward of focusing on small, consistent actions. They sneak up on you in the best way. So stop looking for the big moment. Stop waiting to feel ready. Pick something so small you can start it right now, and then show up tomorrow, and the day after that. Because rebuilding yourself isn't about doing everything. It's about doing something every single day until the small things become the big things that change your life. Your mind is like a stage, and only a limited number of actors can perform on it at once. If you fill that stage with other people's drama, opinions, and negativity, there's no room left for your own priorities. Protecting your mental space is not selfish. It's essential if you're serious about rebuilding yourself. Where your attention goes, your energy flows, and if all your focus is on things that don't move your life forward, you'll burn out long before you see any real change. The first step in protecting your mental space is understanding that attention is a resource. Just like money, you have a limited amount of it each day. Every time you give your attention to gossip, scrolling endlessly on social media, or worrying about what someone else thinks of you, you're spending it. The question is, are you spending it on things that bring a return on investment, or are you throwing it away? Rebuilding yourself requires you to be intentional with that currency. One of the fastest ways to drain your mental energy is by trying to please everyone. This habit not only steals your focus, but it also conditions you to measure your worth based on other people's reactions. That's a dangerous trap because you'll never have control over how others see you. You can do everything right and someone will still criticize you. So instead of wasting mental space trying to manage other people's opinions, use that energy to manage your own growth. Ask yourself, is this thought or task helping me become the person I want to be? If the answer is no, it doesn't deserve prime real estate in your mind. Another major focus thief is comparison. Every time you measure your progress against someone else's highlight reel, you're essentially telling yourself you're behind, even when you might be exactly where you need to be. Comparison tricks your brain into thinking you're failing, which kills motivation and makes it harder to stay consistent. The truth is, you can't rebuild yourself if your eyes are always on someone else's lane. Protecting your mental space means keeping your focus on your own path and your own pace. Boundaries are your best defense here. And boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about creating the conditions you need to thrive. That might mean limiting time with people who drain you, muting accounts that make you feel inadequate, or saying no to commitments that don't align with your priorities. At first, this can feel uncomfortable, especially if you're used to saying yes to everything. But remember, every no to something that doesn't serve you is a yes to something that does. One of the most overlooked aspects of protecting your mental space is managing your input. Your brain is constantly absorbing information through conversations, the news, social media, and even the background noise you consume. If you feed it a steady diet of negativity, fear, and chaos, you'll think and feel accordingly. But if you intentionally choose content, people, and environments that inspire you, challenge you, and educate you, you'll naturally start to think and act differently. This is why curating your environment is so important. It's also worth noting that protecting your mental space doesn't mean avoiding every difficult thing in life. Growth requires you to face challenges, but there's a difference between productive struggle and unnecessary noise. Productive struggle helps you grow. Unnecessary noise distracts you and keeps you stuck. Your job is to get better at telling the difference, and that comes with practice. When you protect your mental space, you create a kind of quiet strength. You become less reactive to things that used to throw you off course. You stop giving away your energy to things you can't control, and in that space, you find clarity. The kind that allows you to focus on your goals without being constantly pulled in 100 directions. That clarity is what makes it possible to rebuild yourself with intention. So take inventory of your life. Look at where your attention is going every day. Look at who and what is living rent-free in your head. Then start making choices that keep your mental space clean, clear, and focused. Because the truth is, you can't build a new version of yourself on a cluttered mental stage. You need room for your own vision to take center spotlight. And that means guarding your focus like it's your most valuable asset. Most people misunderstand discomfort. They think it's a sign they're doing something wrong, that they're out of their depth, or that they should stop. But here's the truth. Discomfort is often the clearest signal that you're growing. When you rebuild yourself, you are literally stepping into unfamiliar territory. You're breaking old habits, challenging your own identity, and pushing against patterns you've lived with for years. Of course, it's going to feel uncomfortable. Your brain is wired to resist change because it prefers the safety of what's familiar, even if what's familiar isn't good for you. Think about how muscles grow. You don't build strength by lifting weights that are easy. You grow when you push past your comfort zone and create tiny tears in the muscle fibers. Those tears are necessary, they heal stronger than before. Personal growth works the same way. Discomfort is the tear that happens when you push yourself beyond what you've known. Without that stress, there's no growth. The problem is we've been conditioned to avoid anything that feels uncomfortable. From a young age, we're taught to seek safety, ease, and instant gratification. And while that might keep you comfortable, it also keeps you stuck. If you want to rebuild yourself, you have to flip your relationship with discomfort. Instead of seeing it as something to escape, you need to start seeing it as proof that you're making progress. Let's get practical. Say you're trying to build confidence. Speaking up in meetings or introducing yourself to strangers will feel awkward at first. Your heart might race, your palms might sweat. That's not a sign you should stay quiet. It's a sign your comfort zone is expanding. Or maybe you're trying to get healthier. The first week you change your diet or hit the gym, your body might protest. You might feel sore, tired, or irritable. That's not a sign you're failing. It's a sign your body is adapting to a new normal. Here's the key. Discomfort isn't permanent. Your brain and body adapt faster than you think. What feels uncomfortable today will eventually feel natural if you keep showing up. And once it feels natural, that's your cue to push yourself again. Growth happens in cycles. You stretch, you adapt, you stretch again. The moment you stop stretching, you stop growing. But there's another side to this. You have to learn to distinguish between productive discomfort and destructive discomfort. Productive discomfort is the kind that comes from pushing yourself toward your goals, like learning a new skill, building discipline, or facing a fear. Destructive discomfort is the kind that comes from staying in situations that harm you, like toxic relationships, burnout from overwork, or constant self-criticism. One moves you forward, the other holds you back. Rebuilding yourself means you get better at telling the difference and choosing the kind of discomfort that leads to growth. One of the best ways to get more comfortable with discomfort is to start small. Instead of throwing yourself into the deep end, find little ways to challenge yourself every day. Take a cold shower for 30 seconds, try a new workout, have a difficult conversation you've been avoiding. These small acts teach your brain that discomfort is survivable, even valuable. Over time, you'll start to seek it out instead of running from it, because you'll recognize it as the doorway to your next level. The truth is, you can't rebuild yourself without being willing to feel things you'd rather avoid. Fear, doubt, frustration, even embarrassment. But here's the magic. Every time you face those feelings and keep going, you chip away at the old version of yourself. You prove you can handle more than you thought. You stop being controlled by your comfort zone and start controlling it. So the next time you feel uncomfortable, don't immediately retreat. Pause and ask yourself, am I feeling this way because I'm growing? If the answer is yes, lean in. Trust that on the other side of that discomfort is a stronger, wiser, more resilient version of you. Because the only way to become that version is to walk through the discomfort instead of around it. One of the biggest traps people fall into when they're trying to rebuild themselves is chasing perfection instead of progress. Perfection sounds noble. It feels like the ultimate standard. But in reality, it's a moving target you will never hit. And the pursuit of it often keeps you from starting in the first place. You tell yourself you'll launch the business when you have the perfect plan, you'll start working out when you have the perfect schedule, or you'll speak up when you've found the perfect words. But life doesn't reward perfection. It rewards action and persistence. Tracking your progress, not perfection, is how you actually move forward. Progress is measurable. It's real. It's the number of pages you read this week, the extra push-up you managed, the fact that you got out of bed a little earlier than usual. These small markers matter because they show you that you're moving, even if you're not where you want to be yet. And when you're rebuilding yourself, the most important thing is movement. Perfection, on the other hand, is rigid. It leaves no room for mistakes. And mistakes are where most of your learning happens. If you're too focused on doing everything flawlessly, you'll be afraid to try new things. You'll play it safe, stay in your lane, and avoid anything that might expose you to failure. But rebuilding yourself requires the opposite. It demands that you try, fail, learn, and adjust. Progress embraces imperfection because it knows the messy middle is where transformation happens. A powerful way to keep your focus on progress is to track your journey in writing. This could be as simple as a notebook where you jot down what you did each day toward your goal. Not only does this keep you accountable, but it also gives you proof that you're moving forward. The human brain is wired to forget how far we've come. Without records, you'll always feel like you're starting over. But when you can look back and see that 3 months ago you couldn't run a mile, and now you can, or that 6 weeks ago you couldn't say no to things that drained you, but now you can, it becomes impossible to deny your growth. Tracking progress also helps you identify patterns. Maybe you notice you're more consistent when you work on your goals in the morning. Or maybe you see that you tend to skip certain tasks on stressful days. That awareness lets you adjust your approach so you can keep moving forward. You're not just hoping for change, you're actively engineering it. The shift from perfection to progress also transforms the way you experience setbacks. When you're chasing perfection, a bad day feels like failure. You miss one workout and you tell yourself the whole plan is ruined. You slip up on your diet and you feel like you've undone all your work. But when you're focused on progress, you see those moments for what they are, tiny blips in a much bigger picture. One-off day doesn't erase weeks of effort. In fact, learning to bounce back quickly is part of the progress itself. And here's the truth. The people who make the biggest changes in their lives aren't the ones who do it perfectly. They're the ones who keep showing up even after they mess up. They're the ones who refuse to let a mistake become a reason to quit. Progress isn't about never falling. It's about getting up faster each time you do. When you rebuild yourself, your journey will be full of imperfect days. You'll have moments where you doubt yourself, where you slip into old habits, where you wonder if any of this is working. That's normal. That's part of it. The key is to measure yourself against who you were yesterday, not against some flawless version of yourself that doesn't exist. So drop the pressure to be perfect. Start tracking the small wins, the daily actions, the quiet changes that no one else might see yet. Because over time, those little steps add up to something incredible. One day, you'll look back, and it won't be perfection that got you there. It will be the steady, imperfect, relentless progress you chose every single day.